welcome to Impossible Live. Welcome back if you're joining us again. And if you are joining us again, you are in for an amazing, sparkly treat to wake and help us celebrate life this week. Brilliant Kimberly is back to continue our Pockets of Peace series. And what you're going to laugh is, it's 2026. We're mixing it up a little bit. Normally, in our Pockets of Peace series, Pockets of Peace preceded. That was the punctuation and the invitation. And hey Nicole. Nicole's got a cool comment for us. And I can't wait for them to allow us to show it. But Kimberly, Nicole's starting us off today. Where is the moral line drawn in the sand? So let's remember that after we get to introductions. And besides thanking Nick for kicking us off today and for joining, hey Jackie, and Nick for joining. Yes, Bill, you made it. You made it. Hey Bill, hey Margaret, hey Jackie, hey Nick. Yes, Bill, you are here and right on time. And Bill we are hurraying and celebrating with you. One of the things I love as Kimberly's returning to continue our series of Pockets and Peace, and for those of you who haven't had a chance to enjoy it, this is the 5th set of our series. And today's topic, amazing Kimberly frame, from the perspective of trust begins within. And I'm delighted to thank amazing Lachelle Atkins, America's Supermom, for introducing me to Kimberly in her dynamic elephant strategy community on Clubhouse. For those of you who are thirsty for those LinkedIn audio days, I would encourage you, join Kimberly, join Lachelle, join ZZ Williams on Clubhouse, some of their fantastic audio rooms, as well as Angie Alexander and PQ Coaches Collective. But Kimberly, welcome back. And for those who haven't met you yet, had a chance to really sample and learn about your magic, please share with them some wonderful Kimberly isms for today. And warm welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much, Mel. It is an absolute pleasure to have these conversations, this dialogue with you. And I'm so excited about our dialogue today in regards to trust, because it's so important. It's coming up in many conversations. But I'm jumping ahead of myself. Hello, everyone. It's good to see you today. My name is Kimberly Lechnick. Hello to everyone. I heard a few familiar names, and that was Nick, and I heard Jackie's name, and a couple others. But I've got so much stacked up that I don't see any comments, so I will say hello to you on the flip side. My name, again, Kimberly Lechnick. I am passionate about two things, that is family and leadership. And what do? I am a coach for executive women in midlife, and it all starts with the self-worth. And again, enough of that. We're here to be present with everyone today. And I just want to turn it over to you, Mel, and I can't wait to get this party started.
Well, we are delighted to have you back. And Bill says, it's a pleasure to meet you. And hey, Leslie Flowers, welcome. And thanks for joining us. And hey, Leanna. So one of the things I love as we're continuing our Pockets of Peace series is that Kimberly really helped frame the lens for where we started in 2026. And I have to thank you for that. Not just being an amazing guest and for our series of conversations, but I had fun hanging out with Kimberly on Friday during Disruptive Business Leadership with Royce Kowarski's panel. And one of the fun parts was during the panel, I acknowledge that Kimberly and we start by agreeing to disagree. So for those of you who have not had the chance to see us together and you'll love it. We really approach life just from opposite angles. Kimberly as a dynamic mom and a fabulous parent. Mel, the auntie, the godmother. We're coming from that very different lens. The one thing that I love is we're united from a spiritual perspective. Kimberly's leadership and motivational and inspiration is really heavily grounded in faith, and mine's grounded in the opportunity to strengthen our faith walk. So for those of you who haven't had a chance, I encourage you, grab a pen, grab a comfortable seat, grab a beverage, and this toast before we even begin is for you. We are about to approach the year of the fire horse. There's all this stuff happening in our world, and I really appreciate Kimberly's patience because Kimberly has always invited me to have conversations about trust. Kimberly, help our guests who are popping in or joining us. Hey, Sean Michael, warm welcome. Help our guests with our frame today of trust begins within, and how you were inspired to connect that with our Pockets of Peace series. I think that'd be a great place to just start for anybody joining us who wasn't around for the beginning. Kimberly gave us an amazing framework to kick off the year, and thank you for that.
Absolutely. Again, my pleasure. And I just want to say what you were saying earlier about agreeing to disagree. I think that's really, really important. Um, I, being someone who is passionate about growth, I think that is a must to have individuals that come from different perspectives, spending time with them because it opens up the mind. And I just want to have a quick shout out for those names that I just got, and that was Bill and Sean. Good to have you here. And all right, let's get started. I love your work in regards to trust. And I know you and I have had several different dialogues, or many different dialogues about it. It's important, you know, it's important. It's being talked about. Even this morning, I counted how many times the word trust came up in a community setting. 12. 12. It's on people's minds. And there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. And I think when it comes from a foundational perspective, Mel, when I think about growth, when I think about us getting to know ourselves from a really deep place, we can't lead that journey without knowing ourselves. And part of what I do in coaching through the midlife reclamation method
And this happens on Friday. Kimberly's
is
paused
going
for
to
a
talk
second. You're
about
back.
that.
So, Kimberly, we lost you for a hot second. So, tell us again about the reclamation method.
Absolutely. So, trust, again, being foundational, is part of what I do in terms of the midlife reclamation method in my coaching practice. And trust is foundational. And that's why I really appreciate your work, Mel, in terms of what you're doing to lead people on this journey. Because there are so many people, individuals, that don't really understand how they connect in. Like, what does that mean? What does trust mean to me? And how can I be in relationship to it? And you know what? It makes sense. I don't know what the statistics are, but it makes sense because if we look at just a short span of time, we can see that the amount of touch points, just from an entrepreneurial perspective, the amount of touch points that needs to occur before someone can actually begin the trust journey. 23, I believe it was around 6, 8. Now we're at 23. 23 touch points. I think just that alone can tell us the need for really kind of understanding how we relate to the word trust. So I'm going to send it over to you. I'm interested in your insights as a businesswoman and as someone who is passionate about the topic.
This happened on Friday. Something interesting is happening on Kimberly's end in terms of her connection. So we're gonna hope it improves a little bit. And it may just be a matter of, as many of us say, we're just gonna make a good wish. And today's conversation may turn into a podcast. So I think one of the interesting things, as Leslie's reminding us, tomorrow starts the year of the fire horse. And it's a solar eclipse, and it's kind of a magical day. I think it's interesting that Kimberly's saying that trust is coming up so often. What happened for me recently was I've attended 2 webinars, and during both of them, a trust recession was mentioned. I don't believe in a trust recession. And the reason why I don't believe in a trust recession is I am a trust pessimist. And if there was a trust recession, I'd say from my trust journey, that trust recession started at the age of 7, and I'm delighted to have been on an extended trust journey where digging out of that recession has been the invitation that I received from amazing Yvette Bethel of organizational. I think is interesting is, and we're obviously having one of those days where today our internet is truly going to go in and out. I'm noticing the light show as Kimberly disappears and I disappear, and I'm laughing because normally StreamYard or LinkedIn warn us. So thank you on the other end for all of your patience as we're dealing with whatever's happening with tech today. I think the part that trust begins is the place to start, because trust can begin with a learned experience, an experience from a book, from a movie, from a story we hear, from a play, from someone else. My first journey with trust, they kind of crunch together. And the gene keys, people would say, they crunch together in that 7th year for me. So other people having their, hi, Dr. Marcia, welcome. I think that some of the experiences were external. I had family members who had their trust broken and who started conversations with me. My first love had his trust broken. I had my trust broken. And I think that's why I think when people are mentioning recession, and Dr. Marcia is saying trust can begin with kindness and respect. But I really love what Jonathan Howard said after our We Rise and Soar open house on Friday. And Jonathan said, a trust recession starts when someone doesn't believe something that you have said. So those were acknowledging trust recessions, maybe acknowledging a time when promises were broken, time when an expectation was set. And I think the trust begins with means we have an opportunity to define it, to refine it, to explore. And I am totally laughing as there was a light show on StreamYard today on my end. So Kimberly, hey, if I get kicked out for a little bit, Kimberly, you know what to do. If I could please keep going. But smiling also because trust can only start when we're willing to be trust willing. And if we're not willing to start that journey of exploring or healing and exploring trust willingness, exploring trustworthiness, and really sharing our observations about trust. So I'm really grateful to all of y'all who have been helping me tap into originally Ignite Trust, which is Mel's mission, but into the invitation to cultivate trust and plant seeds. Kimberly, where should we go next?
Oh my goodness. It's so important. But you had me at trust recession. I have not heard about that
Chris Cold says that he mentioned it 18
terminology.
years
You
ago.
have love that you didn't really want to attach yourself to that, right? Because when we attach ourselves, we're attaching our energy and we are bringing that to us. And being an expert in trust, we certainly do not want to encourage anything of the sorts. It's just so interesting. I'm looking at what you were just saying, and I'm just fascinated by it. I want to go back to Nick's question. She said, "Where is the moral line drawn in the sand?" And Nick, if you're able to kind of clarify that a little bit more for us, I would really appreciate that, because I think that was a powerful question that you asked. Again, the question was, where is the moral line drawn in the sand? And I'm assuming you're talking in regards to trust, right? Uh, if you could clarify that for us, because again, it's so important. But I want to kind of go to the first pillar in my framework, and that is release. I think, again, as a foundational piece, it's really, really important to really understand, um, do we trust ourselves? Everything starts with ourselves. So before we can give that trust out, I think it's a really good question to ask yourself, is there an area in my life that I am not trusting my judgment somewhere in internal? Maybe it's just that I don't really understand how I relate to the word, right? TRUST. It's 5 letters. Do I just not really understand how I'm relating to it? So as we kind of dive into this conversation of pockets of peace, I think that self-trust, this ability to stop, breathe, and choose differently was really the starting point.
Ah, but you see, you got 3 steps there. You got 3 steps. So if we went back to Nick's question, and I think Nick's question reminds me of a childhood image I fell in love with. And I remember falling in love with a calendar that Nana had on the wall. And Nana's calendar had a statement about footprints in the sand. And I remember seeing this as a kid and asking my Nana about it, because the footprints in the sand image on her calendar basically said, was a reminder from a faith perspective that we're never alone. And when we only saw one set of footprints in the sand, that was when a higher power was carrying us. So we didn't have to walk alone. And I think that part of the trust lens is the invitation. Because some people don't want to start within. They're not interested in the transparency journey. They're not interested in the vulnerability journey. They're interested in what stage of leadership are, aspiring, emerging, for succession. They're not necessarily ready to really look at it through the lens, because I think the part that's hitting me a little bit as the light show starting with our images is that is internal, is external, trust is everywhere. And the part that Yvette taught me that I really, really had to learn was trust is energy. Trust is emotion. And sometimes we're in settings where The opportunity to share our emotions just isn't welcome. It may be a generational thing. The person may have a glass that is overly full. They have no room, no space, no bandwidth. And I think that part of the self trust journey, I had to learn internally to define my trust journey with the word overwhelm. It's about our observations. And one of the things I'm excited about in the process of defining this more is we're launching a webinar series next week, Cultivate Trust in a Fragile AI World. For those of you who have not seen a link to invest yet, it's not an accident. It's an invitation when you're ready to come join us in a trust community as we take a new journey. Whether your journey is one from looking from the outside or taking a deeper dive into it as a VIP. For those of you who know from the learning and development lens, and really, I'm delighted. This is now 4 years deep in a trust journey, thanks to Yvette Bethel of Organizational Soul, and with tremendous fuel and encouragement from others like Kimberly, who've been taking steps with us in the trust community, and Sean and Dr. Marcia and amazing Amalia Gardner, who really lit it up for me last year. And I appreciate that. I think the thing about starting within is, as Kimberly said, it's an invitation. Do we want to listen to our own voice? And in some cases, are we listening to the stories and the narratives that may have broken our self trust, may have affected it? So I love that Kimberly's got a lot of childcare experience and as a parent up close and personal, right? In that process of really watching the origin. We we had the chance to celebrate our 1 year old, our youngest member of our family's birthday a couple of weeks ago, as she's celebrating the year of the fire horse in Vietnam. And it's that celebration has started today for them. But I think of those steps, whether it's the steps in the sand, as Nick invited us to start there. I think, as Kimberly's saying, we got to start on a foundational level. And we start, some of us start mid step, some of us start with feeling we have less support, others feel that we have more support. And Kimberly, from a faith based perspective, you're always looking for the answers. I treasure that. And we're both lifelong learners. But for the person who's not sure what question to ask themselves in that process of locating pockets of peace or locating sacred spaces where they can grow and flourish, where would you suggest that they start?
Well, again, I think what we're doing here with Pockets of Peace is the first step, right? It is the first step to because it's the proof. It's the proof that you can trust yourself. It's the proof that you can trust yourself. Again, stopping and breathing and choosing different. So again, being open and willing to explore. I always wake up every single day and I ask my higher power, what is it that I can learn today? Who do you have for me? What do you have for me? And I will tell you, that is where my trust is rooted. That is where the trust starts. This idea of pockets of peace, I love it as we continue the discussions, Mel, because for me, the pockets of peace are really creating micropauses. It's creating a micropause, a pattern if interrupt, if you will, of self-abandonment. We're no longer abandoning ourselves. We're leaning into what is true for us in the moment. And for me, there's no greater rooting than being rooted in our faith. In our faith. For me,
What about the
that
person
is
though?
foundational.
What about the person who doesn't, whose faith has been broken? And I'll say it straight up. I was at that point probably a little bit over almost 3 decades ago. We lost, and I thank every guardian angel, every council of light, every higher power. But we lost three people that we absolutely adored within a really, really short period of time. And I felt like it was the biggest test of faith. At that time, I was still spiritual. I still believed. I just wasn't sure why we were being given the opportunity to say goodbye to people that we loved. And I didn't realize at the time that I needed to make peace with the fact that I was not an end of life doula, that this was just another part of the really complex season of gratitude, grief, and growth. And Leslie's sharing with us clean, don't wash or cut your hair, don't remove your trash, do not wear solid black or solid white. Leslie's invitation for us tomorrow is wear red or preferably wear purple. This is the Chinese New Year, and if you do these things, you wash away the blessings. So I appreciate that because Leslie's reminding us from the astrology perspective. You know, some may believe that their faith is rooted, as you say, in your morning practice. Yours starts before your eyes open. And I'll be straight up. My morning practice starts with gratitude. I want to
Mhm.
acknowledge the opportunity to recognize whether it's before sunrise, whether it's moonlight, whether it's the snow. I think what you're really reminding us is to have an opportunity in the pockets of peace to to acknowledge different levels of awareness. Is that where you wanted us to start when you said it begins within with internal awareness or internal reflection?
Hmm. Well, actually, I was going in a little bit of different direction.
Go on and we will follow you. We will follow you. And as Margaret said, everything is a lesson and it depends on us how we embrace that lesson. So Kimberly,
It
come on, teach us, school us. We are here.
does. I mean, Mel, I'm everything. It's a little bit more complex, but I want to go back again to what you were saying because we were kind of going in the direction of faith, and I know we all have different walks, but I call them access points. I call them access points because we are all really honestly walking ourselves home. We're all walking each other home. We're all very much more similar than different. And so, with that being said, whatever our belief system is, and I don't really want to take too much time talking about my faith walk, right? Because again, my grandmother was Catholic, my grandfather Jewish. They had three children. I ended up with no GPS system in terms of spirituality. It was determine your own path, go your own way. And I will tell you, in hindsight, it's exactly the way it should have been because I believe everything to be divine. Took a little bit longer, but I realized that access point for me was God. Now, for someone else, it might be energy, Buddha, Allah. It matters not. But we're all walking each other home. So when we're thinking about the first part or points, access points, where we can kind of join together in this trust, what your work is, Mel, or if we're talking in terms of pockets of peace,
Kimberly,
I
they are
feel like
pausing us once again, and I love Joyce's comment here as our tech is obviously having some fun today. Joyce says we're putting too much emphasis on a distorted notion of trust. Trust goes and grows with us. It is shaped and reshaped by our experiences and expectations. Joyce, I really understand through that trust lens. And Kimberly, you're back. You're back. We lost you in the middle of that brilliance. We lost you. We lost you. But we're here focusing on Joyce's comment as an anchor point to bring us back.
I love that, Joyce. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if you're saying that our conversation is too much emphasis on the distorted notion of trust. Interesting. I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
I think Joyce means in our world. You know, Joyce is I think Joyce is saying in our worlds, and I
Mhm.
can say it also from, you know, for those of you who have had the opportunity to join us in We Rise and Soar open house. Joyce has some serious skills from the end of life doula perspective, and from a caregiving perspective, and from supporting people through some of the legal choices they make in terms of setting up guardianship and care plans for elders. And
Okay.
Omega Elder Care Services is Joyce's key to her magic. I love that she's mentioning too much emphasis. I think you're saying, Kimberly, start from a spot, and Joyce is reminding us our reflections change, our lens changes, and that trust
Yeah.
goes and grows with us. That's the part I'm really taking from there. So, Kimberly, before we lose you again, where's the next part of your framework?
Uh, we go from we go from release, what does it mean to release? And then we go into recalibrate. So again, our conversation here with pockets of peace, these pockets of peace that we're creating in our lives. Right. So again, a pocket of peace could be prayer. It could be gratitude. It could be just breathing exercises, right? There's lots of different invitations to invite us into pockets of peace and what that looks like for us. Again, it's part of our foundational process. So we go from release to recalibrate. So these pockets of peace are like tuning forks. They create consistent moments of self attunement. I think that's so very important. When we're talking about emotional mastery, when we're talking about knowing ourselves fully, it's important to understand how it is to access self attunement. And they help us really redefine our internal compass. So, again, I love our conversations when it comes to pockets of peace. It is so foundational in this journey, however, you're going to access it, however, you're going to access it. But there is a connection, and that's why I was so excited to kind of invite the conversation and connect it into self-trust, because for me, the self-trust connection is really, in terms of recalibration, it's really honestly where we begin to embody it, right? Because again, and you will speak to that, trust is a journey, and we're accessing trust in our own timing, so I'd be interested to kind of hearing more, about that, Mel.
I'd love to use the frame that Joyce is giving us, that we're, as human beings, we're confused by what we are told we should do and who we are told we should be. And I
Mhm.
appreciate that lens because it's acknowledging the external part of our trust journeys. A lot of the messages are not from us, they're ancestral, they're part of a legacy journey. They're things we learn from teachers, they're things we learn from family members at an assortment of ages. And Jay's saying pockets of peace could be appreciating your outside surroundings. So I think there's the
Mhm.
two filters is that sometimes what happens to break our trust has an external source, and sometimes it can have an internal source. The shoulda, woulda, coulda, the regrets, the fear, the guilt, the shame. that sometimes people carry. And yes, Jay, Master Yoda is always welcome to Pockets of Peace. And Jay, may the force be with you also. I think the thing, as we talk more about trust, and I'm really excited to take a deeper dive during our upcoming webinar series. So, full transparency, our webinar series is going to be 6 monthly webinars on Mondays, just like on Possible Live. We're going to pick a different Monday of each month. I'm going to pick in guest speakers. And in that process of exploring peace and helping others cultivate peace in our fragile AI world, the invitation will be to join us for 3 parts of the journey or to join us for 6. And one of the reasons why it's 3 or 6 is sometimes you want to sample something, see if it works for you, see if it aligns with you. And what I had to learn from a peace perspective was, yes, Joyce, we have to allow and accept a certain level of vulnerability in order to determine what works for us. Joyce, that journey of vulnerability, for some of transparency, for some in a world where vulnerability and transparency aren't always welcomed in certain workplaces, then aren't always welcome in certain situations with family dynamics. But Joyce, thank you for that mic drop. I love what Kimberly said before about trust having roots, whether they're roots that we plant, whether they're roots that we uproot because we're moving, we're in some other part of a transformational journey. What I had to learn about trust was I needed to make time and time for the journey of self trust. And I appreciate Yvette's patience because in the beginning, I didn't realize that I was going on a self trust journey. I didn't realize it was a self care journey, a self love journey, a self empathy journey. I didn't realize all of these gifts were going to pop up. But what I love is we started with Nicole or Nick's question about sand and morals and the reminder in Kimberly's invitation today, whether you're following a specific framework or not, your internal GPS is what determines whether you're in a peaceful situation or not. You're following the energy, you're following the invitation, you're following someone who lights you up. And I really appreciate it because Joyce has reminded me in the beginning of my trust journey, positive intelligence helped me with vulnerability. So the trust part of the transparency, the emotional mastery side could come in. And if you're looking for more emotional mastery discussions, you need to go hang out with Kimberly. Kimberly, what do you got working this week in your in your in your clubhouse conversations, as we're inviting people also to check our 4 parts of our previous series and to check what's coming up for you. What do you have coming up this week around pockets of peace and conversations?
Oh, thank you so much for that invitation, Melanie. So on Tuesday, tomorrow, we have a beautiful discussion that will take place at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. And so I invite you to join. We're going to be talking about intimacy this week. Again, trust, intimacy, these things are all interconnected. The Wednesday conversation is on it is a collaboration with Dr. Lisa Drew and I, and it's just an incredibly lovely space. We'd invite you to join us because, again, when we are coming together in community is when we have more perspectives in the room, like Mel and I kind of shared a little bit earlier. She kind of pointed out that we come from 2 different places, and we kind of try to find a commonality. in which we can connect. And I think that's really important when we have these discussions. So Tuesday, we'd love for you to join us 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, Wednesday, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I'm so excited to announce that on Sunday evening at 7:15 p.m., I am reading, talking about pockets of peace. I am reading, so this is a book reading, but there is an invitation to join the conversation. The book by Megan Marshman, and it is called Relaxed. And so if you are looking, I know that for me, the invitation was for me to kind of invite others into my routine and how I flow before I move into my week, right? It's really rooting. It's very spiritual grounding. Again, you can take what resonates and leave the rest. That's how all of these conversations work, right? Because some of the information is going to resonate and other parts of it aren't going to resonate. And that's the
And we
and
temporarily have lost beautiful
Sunday
Kimberly. You're back.
evenings.
You're back.
I go with the flow. So it's Tuesday, Wednesday, and right now Sunday evening, 7:15 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Well, I absolutely love that. And as Kimberly's inviting you, we're going to make sure that the links to join her are in the comment sections on both Meta and on LinkedIn. And we'll add them to YouTube so that you can find them when you're looking for her across platforms. And while Kimberly's inviting you, I'd love to also extend the invitation for you to join us as my guest on next Monday at 3:33 p.m. Eastern as Cultivate Trust in a Fragile AI World kicks off. I'd love to invite you for the first hour and 11 minutes to see if it's a flavor that aligns with you. And I'd love to invite you in because if it feels like it's a right space, I'd love to invite you and encourage you to continue joining us for the series and investing in some time. So next Monday, we're kicking off Cultivate Trust. We didn't start the fire. And that date will be February 23rd. And on March 9th, we'll have Cultivate Trust coming out of the dark. What you're going to love are for on February 23rd and March 9th, Bob Woods will return to join us, and Carla Sellers of Virtual Link Suite headquarters will join us for those first two segments. And it'll give you a chance to kind of Carla shared during We Rise and Soar open houses and during Girl on Fire. And Bob joined us for Through the Fire at the beginning of this year. What you're going to love is every single segment of our Cultivate Trust in a Fragile AI World has a musical theme to it. There's a song. And it's the same way that a lot of our impossible lives have a song to them. But the first one is We Didn't Start the Fire. The second one is Coming Out of the Dark. The third one is Cultivate Trust. How do you keep the music playing? The fourth segment of our webinar series is Cultivate Trust Brick by Brick. The fifth part, Cultivate Trust, Open My Heart. And the sixth segment, Cultivate Trust, Whatever We Imagine, will lead for an invitation for you to join us for a hybrid, live, or virtual series as we're continuing our discussions in our trust community. But I can't thank amazing Kimberly for joining us enough today. I also would love to invite you to continue joining us for Pockets of Peace because the document Kimberly sent me, Kimberly is shaping what are probably our next 3 or 4 Pockets of Peace series this year. For those of you who are on Meta, I'll also asked Kimberly on Meta on my Be Visible with Mel page to add some of the links to join us. And one of the things I want to thank you for today is your patience with technology. And we've noticed this before. When we talk about deep stuff, sometimes technology is just telling us you need to pause in between because we need to hear the spice of that ingredient. But as Kimberly is saying, find her on Clubhouse. And Kimberly, the name of your community on Clubhouse, is it in that paperbell.me link that's underneath your name also?
Well, it's actually Intentional Pathways by Design. That's the name of my company. And so you'll find us here on LinkedIn. We have a community, and we also have a community on Clubhouse. And the reason for that is I really love the audio. I love the audio. I'm finding over the course of time, because I've done a lot of video, I just love audio. It is just I just really connect into it. Maybe there's radio in the future. I don't know, but I, I
That's
love
a
it.
great, that is great. And I love as you're saying that, the reminder that today's one of the first days on LinkedIn that I didn't start our post about trust begins within pockets of peace with a question. The question I'd love to leave you with is, how long will it take us to cultivate trust with awareness, discernment, and respect? If you're looking for ways to answer that question, stay tuned. Come hang out with us this week, next week. And I also want to thank you just for joining us today. Stay safe, stay well, stay inspired, stay in touch, take great care. And we hope you have a peaceful day and a peaceful week filled with blessings, opportunities, and possibilities. If we haven't had the chance to chat recently, please reach out. We'd love to see you. And if our upcoming webinar series sounds like it might be a good fit for you, you'll see a link popping up shortly. And that link is a paid link, but for anybody who expresses an interest, I will send you a code for a gift certificate to join us as my guest next week. Kimberly, as always, thank you so much for joining us for Trust Begins Within Pockets of Peace and for changing our GPS and our steps and our footprints a little bit today. And Joyce, thank you for joining us. We adore you. And stay safe, everybody. Take great care. And please, please, please stay safe.